Well, certainly succulents have become a very popular item in gardens of late, and they have gone crazy with them here at the University of Tennessee's West Tennessee Research Station. I'm here with Jason Reeves, who's a horticulturist here at the station, and you guys have had a succulent summer out here.
We have, yeah. We kind of chose succulents this year because we'd had 2 dry summers.
Right.
And my gosh, this has been the wettest one on record, I
think.
So,
right. Hardiness on these?
The succulents we're looking at now, which we've planted up in these satellite dishes, are actually tropical or not hardy in our area, so they have to be brought inside, either into a greenhouse or, you know, for a homeowner in an unheated garage as long as it's enclosed.
Sure, and you just mentioned it. These giant containers that you're looking at are satellite dishes, the bowls of satellite dishes that have been laid flat on the ground, right?
Yeah, we try to do something fun and whimsical each year for our theme for the summer, and it has to be something that doesn't cost money.
Right.
And so we requested satellite dishes, and we got plenty, and so we've used those for our containers.
And these came from people who donated them to you,
exactly.
Or you found them?
People donated, and we went and picked them up, and you know, they have excellent drainage because
right.
They're wire mesh,
right.
And they work great for succulents, and kind of elevated them off the ground a little bit to add another dimension.
Okay, so we've kind of mentioned succulents in general, but let's talk about a few things in particular, like this really beautiful variegated century plant that's here in the center of this one.
Yeah, so this is a tropical or non-hardy agave for our area, so it does have to be brought in. This one's approximately 10 years old, but it's lived in a pot for many, many years.
Okay.
Will be dug up and put back in a pot and taken into the greenhouse for the wintertime.
I don't envy the person that has to dig, which is you, I assume, that has to dig this spiny thing up and take it into the greenhouse for the winter. Any other favorites? I know, is that shark skin over?
That is shark skin.
At the front.
And there's a lot of MEDIO-PICTA.
Right, many different kinds of variegated ones. Great structure, but also great color
yes.
in the foliage. So I see, in addition to some of the century plants, there also are things like some of the KALANCHOEs or KALANCHOEs, a lot of people call them.
Well, yeah, we're just mixing in some of the other plants to give you some different forms and textures.
Sure.
And yeah, the KALANCHOE over there, some of those having known as mother of millions because they're producing the little babies up and down the leaf and falling off. And actually those have fallen off and come up. We didn't plant them there.
Right. And then over here, just outside of the dish, is one of my favorite succulents.
Yeah, this is a type of pencil cactus, and this one's either called sticks on fire or fire sticks. And especially in the cooler weather that we're having now just before winter, it really colors up with that intense yellow and orange combination.
Right.
And it's an easy house plant to keep. You can, you know, dig this up or keep it in a pot and bring it in the house through the winter time. But
sure.
like you said, easy to propagate from cuttings as well. You let the cutting dry for a day or 2 before sticking it.
Right.
But
usually
a great
I
addition.
just do it in sand or something and it'll root pretty
really
easily.
Good draining soil.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to point out in this big container is this plant right here, which most people probably wouldn't recognize because it's not the form we're used to seeing. But this is mother-in-law's tongue, right?
It is. This is sansevieria cylindrica. And you typically wouldn't think about using it outside, but it works great. Full sun or partial shade outside, and you can put all the forms of sansevieria, mother-in-law's tongues, outside.
And one thing we might want to mention is if you've overwintered your plants indoors, you'll need to kind of acclimate them a little bit in the spring. You wouldn't want to take them from being house plants and then just drop them right out into the middle of the garden.
Exactly. You got to gradually kind of get them used to the sun. So put them
sure.
out where they get some morning sun, and in a couple days introduce them to a little bit more, and then eventually full sun.
Right. We've talked a lot about the agaves or the century plants, and I do want to point this particular one out in the middle because it is such a beautiful thing. I love variegated plants. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is a variety called Joe Hoke.
That's right.
I'm sure named after somebody.
Sure. Yeah, that wonderful variegated foliage, and not quite as spiny as some of the others, but
right.
a nice agave.
A little softer leaf and not, again, as spiny along the edge. It does have a pretty good little point on the end of it, but also not quite as large, so something that maybe somebody could manage.
Yeah, more manageable and also great for pot culture as well.
Sure, sure. And then the flapjack plant, the big which is another species of KALANCHOE, I believe.
Yes, the flapjack is of course named that because of the big leaves that it has. It is very important with it to get in really good draining soil. In the wintertime, bringing it in the house or the greenhouse, drainage is essential, and you certainly don't want to overwater it. It likes it really on the dry side.
Right, I do have one of those in a container at home, and when I bring it in, you know, around the 1st of November, whenever we get our first really hard frost, I basically don't water it again until I put it back out in April, and it sits there fine all winter long. You know, another plant that I think people don't think about using outdoors are the aloes, and there are so many varieties of them. You know, my grandmother had aloe vera in the windowsill in the kitchen for burns and things, but this beautiful aloe has these great coral colored blossoms. Do they all flower?
They all flower, and you know, people don't think about using them outdoors, but you know, naturally in the wild, that's where they grow, and they don't mind the full sun and the heat and even the humidity, as long as you got good drainage. But again, you have to acclimate them, as with the other plants we talked about, when you bring them outside in the summertime. Get them used to the sun first. But yeah, if you have a long growing season outdoors, they will produce these beautiful flowers, and the hummingbirds love them. Right.
There are a lot of succulents that are hardy outdoors. This agave with the really wide foliage, which one is that?
This is whale's tongue, and it's hardy to zone 7 as long as you have adequate winter drainage. So we've mixed a lot of crushed gravel in with the soil to aid in the drainage.
And we probably should mention that really with any of these hardy succulents, good drainage is going to be key, especially getting them through the winter.
Very much so, and especially with the agaves. A lot of those are native to colder regions, but it's a dry winter, such as the
mountains of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, those kinds of places.
High country desert, so it's cold in the winter, but it doesn't rain a lot.
Very dry. Although I guess they're not really succulents. There are a lot of beautiful yuccas out there on the market these days, and they do like the same kind of conditions. So what's this really pretty variegated one?
Yeah, this is Yucca recurvifolia margaritaville, and it gets its species name recurvifolia from the leaves, as you see, kind of recurving down. And I love margaritaville with that beautiful variegated foliage. And you know, more commonly found are those like color guard yucca, which is Yucca filamentosa, and it's easy to find and gives you that same effect as well. And you know, a lot of the newer, more popular yuccas are not spiny on the end as some of the older cultivars that people were kind of afraid of.
Right. So a lot of people are familiar with the old pasture prickly pear, but this is one that's a little more garden friendly.
And you know, it doesn't have those big spines as you typically see, and it has very few of the little fine hairs that you don't see that tend to actually get people. But occasionally I do get one of those in my hand, so it's not totally spineless.
It almost looks like it's going to have kind of an upright habit. Will it eventually just form a big mound, or?
It will. It tends to, when it gets cold in the winter, kind of lay down on the ground and then kind of perk back up in the spring, forming a big mound. Winter drainage is very important with it as well.
Right. Well, I think one of the plants that certainly sparked my interest in hardy succulents was this particular agave, which is Agave perii, and there are a number of different species and subspecies of it, some a little hardier than others, but it looks like this one's done really well for you guys.
Yeah, it has, and again, the winter drainage is important. Here we just mixed in chicken grit like you'd buy at the farm supply store, so it's about 50% grit mixed in, about a foot wide and about a foot deep where we planted it. This one has been in the ground about 2.5 years, and it was in a 6-inch pot when we planted it.
So they're not the fastest growing plants, but it's got some, starting to get some size on it, and eventually, what, probably 2 by 2, so maybe double what we're seeing there now.
Sure.
Okay, so if our home gardeners want to find these hardy succulents for their own gardens, what are a couple of good places that they might look?
Well, some good mail order sources are going to be High Country Gardens out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then Plant Delights Nursery in Raleigh, North Carolina, and both of those ship. And you can check at your local nursery and garden center, but you really need to do your homework if you're looking for hardy ones, and be sure you're buying hardy agaves or succulents for your area, because they're going to offer a lot that are not hardy as well. Sure.
There are a lot of sources out there for greenhouses and nurseries and things that you may not know exactly what you're getting. So good to be educated.
The majority of agaves you're going to find in a nursery are not going to be hardy. So again, do your homework and be sure you're buying what you're looking for.
Keep your eye out.
Yes.
Well, if you happen to be in the Jackson area, don't miss the garden here at the research station. It's just about 5–10 minutes off of the interstate, and it is well worth the trip during any season.